confusion actually gets started. And a lot of questions are asked, how suddenly these two new bills, copies of which you have with you, suddenly emanate from the House of Assembly, asking the SEC to come forward and say, we want to have oversight of how you spend your money and not an oversight of how you...
You're in an election year. When we did Nigeria PLC seeking a new CEO, what can you recall about the Capital Markets Committee in the House of Assembly? People like us and a few others have raised the case that, are we able to get, what's it called, the House of Assembly to actually do something about what they're supposed to be doing? So for some reason, somebody dusted up a 2004 bill. I think the House Bill number 319 was also House Bill number 99 in 2004. Which had been dealt with, and they brought it back with some amendments. Now, rather than throw the whole thing away, there are some fundamental issues which this bill raises, beyond the focus on the fund, which across the board, I haven't found anybody within the market, operators and professionals, who believe that government should try to do what you call regulating the market through the back door. We don't need a fund separate from government to solve this problem. But there is an underlying question here, that there is a gap between what the SEC and SEC is doing concerning unclaimed dividends and what it can do. In fact, there's a very simple argument that the SEC can take over the whole stock exchange in one day. He can solve the unclaimed dividends problem in one day, if only he takes the same wheel with which he took that action to deal with this problem. Now, there are people who are benefiting from these unclaimed dividends. It is in their own best interest, therefore, to make sure that nothing happens to it. But if you answer one simple basic question, you give your account numbers to people and say, look, let's start this e-dividend thing, and yet the same registrars are still sending you checks rather than crediting your account, with under the argument that having most people do not have access to accounts. But it tells me back to one thing: we cannot bank the whole system if we do not find a way to move them towards banking. And if you say that there is a proportion of people who do not have bank accounts, pardon me, the Pareto principle works here. The 20% who makes up the 80% of the volume of these institutions do have it. What therefore? Why is that amount growing? Simple question. There's a rule that says 12 years after these unclaimed dividends haven't been taken,
you can start your bag.
Can somebody therefore show me one single account in this country in the last 20 years that has disclosed that these are unclaimed dividends now statute bad? Has the auditors checked it? Has SEC inspection unit checked it?
Checked it.
Has anybody checked it? Now the failure, this corporate failure of enforcement in terms of the rules we make nonsense of this whole idea of always coming up with some new harebrained idea to create jobs for the boys. The fund is a misadventure. You don't need another fund, a separate government agency to try to administer what should never even have been. You don't create a system for an aberration.
One key question, Femi will come back to the unclaimed dividend bill, but let's get back to this custody issue. Who guards the guardian? This very important bill, as we put it, NBC ProShare puts this in the market memorandum of the 6th of September, to be precise. That was the day the report was published, in terms of who has the oversight functions of the SEC. This new bill that is going for a public hearing today, in a few minutes from now, talk more about the oversight of how the SEC disburse salaries and allowances, pensions and gratuities and things like that, how to set up a reserve account, but doesn't address the fundamental issue of how the SEC itself is funded. And I remember that's one of the key issues in ProShare's NCM 2009 report about what you call the incestuous relationship between the Securities and Exchange Commission and the market operators, because he who pays the piper dictates the tune.
Exactly. It's a concentric circle of incestuous relationships, one feeding the other and building itself up. You find some association holding some session today, and quoted companies are the ones sponsoring the event. Now you find some regulators doing something. It's a conspiracy of professionals designed to make nonsense of the laws in which we make. Take, for example, a simple question: who does SEC truly report to? What was the natural intention of the model? There's a fundamental crisis, not even defining which model the SEC is operating. Maybe he has picked in. You remember the Dennis Odife report 1999, when he said we should jettison the U.S. SEC model, for it didn't work with us. And then whichever model we pick, we make some adjustment. Then we know this is this model that works for us. We can pick new ideas every now and then. But the day that we talk about Malaysia, one day by the SEC chairman, the other day you go to the US SEC with a new person, the other day somebody picks from FSA. It is not that they are picking best practices. It's just a convoluted body of regime. Now the fundamental question is this: which model are you following? So which therefore defines which reporting lines do you have? The key element of the custodian custodial principle means that who guards the guardian? Who guards the regulator? Not because the regulator is way high or whatever. What created the problem was not defining these basic things. What we therefore felt was that in defining this new market, the first thing the SEC must do was create this level understanding of who it reports to. And who better to report to than the people's interest? Because the regulatory function there was to protect investors, the public's interest in this organization, not run the market. Now, it is also its responsibility to see where the market is being run outside, to therefore take action. But those actions within certain rules. There will be things that have not happened before, like the complete breakdown between the council and the management, that it would have to come up with actions. But then the whole purpose of all these laws is to find a way where you go back to this to make the laws and make those laws to make it happen. And but then if we decide to take fire because Nigerians are notoriously so difficult or whatever, we're not going to make any headway on that. So the first rule is that. The second is this rule about how does it get its funding. I remain of the view that the involvement of the Securities and Exchange Commission in secondary market transactions places a burden on it in terms of its ability to remain an independent arbiter in respect of securities fraud and securities infraction. I'll give you an example. An APE infraction is reported, or some other infraction, big treat like Musa Faki did in the February 6th. Those transactions being questioned either for insider dealing or price manipulation are not primary market issues. Therefore, Securities and Exchange Commission have earned monies from these transactions. How does it therefore, being a beneficiary of ill-gotten and illegal, according to the ISA funds, deal with such monies? Does it not therefore forces its hand to look that since this is the revenue we are getting, we take a second look away from these issues? So when you continue to question the fact that SEC is not acting, there's a fundamental issue I see here. Why is it not therefore able to free itself of that? Therefore, he can resolve it by focusing on primary issues, which is more of primary market development issues. And then he therefore defines the other leg of it, that funding from the government, who says it's doing public interest, puts his money there.
We need to talk more about the angle of the government a lot more, because it's been an issue for not 1, 2, 3, not for 10 years, it's more since the beginning of the SEC. But we understand that the SEC got some level of funding from the government, and now the House of Assembly wants